Hi everyone. Welcome to Land and Sea. I'm Jane Adey. This week we're in Brigus, home of the famous sea captain Bob Bartlett. We're here for a special homecoming. A schooner that Bartlett captained for 20 years made its way home to Brigus. It's summer in Brigus on the east coast of Newfoundland. There are colorful blooms and whimsical touches in gardens of the proud people who call this place home. It's a community that feels soft and welcoming. But those familiar with the history of this town know there's a toughness here too. Brigus is famous for hardy sea captains. The most well-known of them all, Captain Robert Abram Bartlett. A master mariner, Bob Bartlett was one of the greatest explorers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. A skilled navigator, he led more than 40 expeditions into the Arctic, including Robert Peary's journey. That adventure in 1908 brought the team close to the North Pole. The National Geographic Society awarded Bartlett the Hubbard Medal for his trail-breaking efforts. In 1914, after his expedition vessel sank in the Western Arctic, Bartlett and Inuk hunter Capt led a 1,280-kilometer trek across the ice to Siberia to find rescuers for the survivors. For that outstanding heroism, Bartlett received the highest award from the Royal Geographical Society.
Come aboard for the trip.
Bartlett was also a natural scientist. In 1925, he bought a 29-meter fishing schooner. He used her to bring curious people north to the Canadian Arctic and Greenland.
I am Captain Bob Bartlett, owner and skipper of the Little Morrissey. She is now getting ready to shove off for a trip to the Arctic region.
The Little Morrissey served as a platform for Arctic knowledge seekers from institutions like the American Museum of Natural History, the Bronx Zoo, and the Smithsonian Institute. Bartlett was their guide into the unknown. He'd raise funds for the Voyages by connecting with wealthy Americans from where he lived in New York. He made all the logistical arrangements, and he'd take along local men from Brigus to work on board. Just imagine the adventure.
Well, we got hundreds of photos here. They all tell a story. That one's Captain Bob.
Margaret Angel's father, Jack Angel, was Bob Bartlett's nephew, and he was on board the Little Morrissey for many northern exploits.
I love these ones of grandfather. I don't think I've seen.
For Margaret and her daughter, Hannah DeYoung, old photos are a direct link to the fascinating history of Brigus.
So what year are these all from?
They are a mixture of 1931, 32, 33, and 35. Those are the years that Dad sailed up north.
Captain Bob Bartlett assigned his nephew Jack to documenting the voyages.
He was young with a camera, and he bought this one in New York. He was just keen to take pictures, and he was pretty good at it. So pictures ended up, going into the New York Times and the Boston, whatever it was. Yeah.
Jack Angel captured life on board and the search for answers about the mysterious North.
Here's a scientist collecting plankton, and he's got, it looks like a puffin there actually, and he's doing some taxidermy on it. They had specific tasks of either collecting specimens, either flowers, mosses, so on, and rocks, and anything like that that they could bring back.
There were lessons in science and navigation and teachings about humanity and cultural respect.
This is Captain Bob with his good friend Uta. Obviously, Captain Bob has given him his pipe. So
That's nice. It's a nice capture, a moment of friendship?
Well, it was, yeah, they thought a lot of each other from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was clearly an exchange of culture as well with the people of the North.
They bounced ideas off each other. There's some, in one of Dad's journals, he talks about taking a dog sled team. He said, oh my God, it's not as easy as it looks. And, you know, so they learned their skills from each other, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There are reminders of Jack Angel's trips north all over Margaret's house, gifts her father was given on his voyages. She even still has the warm shirt and sweater he had on his back for many of the journeys.
Dad didn't talk a whole lot about his trips with his Uncle Robert, but when he did, he just glowed. His head, you could see it flashed back in time, and he was in another place, and he had a huge amount of respect for him.
Bob Bartlett might have lived in New York, but Brigus was always home and the base for his excursions. He used the Little Morrissey to show off his province.
If there was an opportunity to get people to Newfoundland and travel around the coastline and take videos and do like a land and sea thing, you know, and just travel around the communities and tell stories, if he could promote that in New York, he was willing to, he wanted to do that as well.
I think Captain Bob in some ways represents the best of us as Newfoundlanders. He was a character, you know, he liked to tell stories, and he brought them to the world. And where's that one?
This one, I think, is the Morrissey here on the lower side at Brigus. The Morrissey, big story, but little ship. This one, you can barely see it there.
That little ship is still dearly loved in Brigus. After Bob Bartlett died in 1946, the Little Morrissey was sold. The schooner caught fire in New York Harbor a year later. Sunk deliberately to save it from the flames, the vessel was raised, refurbished, and renamed the Ernestina. Since 1983, she's been used as a training vessel in Massachusetts.
I always enjoyed that too.
Hannah is thrilled the boat her grandfather sailed on with Bob Bartlett is making a return.
To see it in real life, you know, not in a photograph from almost 100 years ago, it's still here. So I'd always hoped to see it. To see it in Brigus is a dream.
It will be nice to have my feet on the deck and think about, you know, Dad having been on there and what it would have been like for him. That's definitely, you know, that'll be a highlight. But what's interesting is that with all these generations now, my parents' generation are gone. And there's nobody left who sailed the Morrissey in those times. So it's changed, but it has a new perspective, a new meaning for new people.
When we come back, we'll hear about some of the new sailors on board Bob Bartlett's schooner as the vessel returns to the familiar harbor of Brigus. It's a mozzie old day in Brigus. But the wet weather can't dampen the spirit of this crowd of onlookers peering out into the sea. They're history buffs and boat lovers, here to witness a schooner from this community's past sail into the harbor again. The SSV Ernestina Morrissey, Captain Bob Bartlett's vessel, formerly known as the Little Morrissey, is on her way.
It's drizzly, but you know, it's not windy. It's not
It's
bad
warm,
day, really.
yeah.
It's not that cold.
No, the rain adds a little bit of drama, doesn't it?
Margaret Angel and her daughter Hannah DeYoung have a special connection to the Little Morrissey. Margaret's dad, Jack Angel, was Bartlett's nephew and sailed north on many an expedition with Captain Bob. While Margaret's anticipation is connected to past voyages, Corey and Melissa Sims' excitement is about the present tour en route here to Brigus. Their 22-year-old son, Tyler, is on board.
Really nice.
Yeah. What's your son studying at school? Is it?
Nautical science.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Tyler Sims is one of 12 students from Memorial University's Marine Institute who've been on the boat for 11 days, sailing from Quebec to Brigus.
He loves it at sea. He's going to be a sailor, 100%.
Tyler's mom, Melissa, says since he was a young boy, it's all he's wanted to do.
Well, when he joined Sea Cadets, then he learned to sail. And after that, that was it. He wanted to be on the water.
Yeah, he was hooked,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. He even has his own sailboat, so.
Now he's elated to be on board a tall ship.
He was very excited to tell me that he climbed the mast, and he sent pictures of that home, yeah. That was the one thing he wanted to do before he left. He said, "Mom, I'm going to do it." I'm like, okay, and he did it.
Climbing the mast at sea would be a thrill. And now, another. Sailing in through his hometown harbor just the way Bob Bartlett would have done. And it's equally enchanting for those on shore.
You can start to see it now.
It's kind of like a ghost ship
It does look like a ghost ship.
coming up through the fog.
I think it's got sails up.
I think so too.
Oh, how exciting. Different up close. It's just amazing. Look at
It's so
it.
much bigger than your model box.
Look at all those sheets. Oh my God.
Yeah. Masts are bigger than I pictured.
It's blown me away.
There's Tyler Sims. He says Bob Bartlett's spirit was on board for their journey. The young sailors are in awe of the men who'd made voyages north so many years ago. We lured Tyler off deck for a chat about his adventure.
Bob Bartlett? You know, to me, he was like a rock star, I guess. You know, he got to sail the Arctic on her, you know, he put an engine into her. He was someone to look up to, you know. As a young sailor like myself, you know, I coached sailing in the Sea Cadets and whatnot, and, you know, aspired to be like him, right?
There were lessons in modern technology while at sea and curiosity about techniques used in the early 1900s.
We got to use a sextant, which is a navigation device to calculate star measurements and angles, and that dates back way before his time. It was really cool doing the calculations and seeing where we were to, finding our lat and long with something to look up at the stars with, right? It was unreal.
The ancient tools of navigation were impressive to Tyler. So was standing in the very spot Bob Bartlett did as he steered the Little Morrissey through the waves.
It was incredible thinking, like, I'm holding his wheel, because the wheel is original, that is on the vessel now. I was holding what he held once upon a time, right? Incredible.
All right, well, Brigus.
Bartlett's vessel back in Brigus for the first time in 37 years.
I hope he would say that he's proud of us to bring it home.
When we come back, we'll go on board. Brigus always draws a crowd in summer. And when there's a tall ship tied up at the public wharf, well, there's an even bigger buzz around town. The SSV Ernestina Morrissey is getting a lot of attention. A beauty of a boat, she was a fixture in this harbor for 30 years. Built as a fishing schooner in Massachusetts in 1894, Harold Bartlett brought her to Brigus in 1914. His cousin, Captain Bob Bartlett, bought her in 1925. And for 2 decades sailed his Little Morrissey up north on expeditions. This old schooner's main port is now Massachusetts, where she is the state vessel. Millions of dollars have been spent to maintain her over the years. Locals and visitors are keen to get on board and have a close-up look at this floating piece of Newfoundland and Labrador's history.
Was the fire from the engine?
Margaret Angel is on board with her family.
Yeah. Ellie, do you want to go hold on to the wheel? Come up here.
Here, let me get out of your way.
This is how they hold on to the wheel and steer the boat. They don't have the ropes on there, but they move that around and that moves the boat. So the boat goes that way.
Their feet on the deck of the same boat that carried Margaret's father Jack north with Captain Bob. Jack Angel captured photos of the adventures. Margaret says being on board gives her goosebumps.
Maybe it's because I'm wearing his shirt. maybe this old shirt from the Morrissey is what's, you know, making me feel this way. I don't know. And I wasn't expecting that feeling either. So I really feel my father here, you know. And it's so special. It's just wonderful. There's nothing can compare to the feeling of history coming alive. This is real, you know. History isn't just for the books. There's a lot of living history out there, and this is an example of that for sure. You come down backwards, right?
With special permission, Margaret and her daughter Hannah were allowed below deck, a cozy place she'd heard her father talk about many times.
Oh my God, this is it. This is, the chart table is right where it's supposed to be. You can kind of see the configuration. He would have a picture of Nana Barr. There's a picture of Nana Barr that was always sitting on the chart table. And
Less technology.
no technology. No technology. A pile of books. He would have had a lot of books on board. And
I've been told this was Bob Bartlett's bunk. It's also Dan Moreland's bunk.
okay, well, if that was the captain's bunk, Dad was over there. Yeah.
They're filling in pieces of the puzzle that connect them to this vessel.
6 before there was a watertight bulkhead.
To see it in real life is amazing. I've seen a lot of pictures from my grandfather's collection of when it was, you know, up north, and, you know, there was the huskies and all the people and the crew and the provisions. So it does kind of feel a little bit like a museum version of all of that, I guess. But there's something about the height of the masts and the sails, and that just brings, you can picture it. It becomes real.
Your sea, bud.
Margaret is proud of the continued interest in Brigus, Captain Bartlett, and this big old ship.
Newfoundlanders are like that. They like a good story, and they like hearing about it. And as long as we're going to be telling stories, the story will be alive, for sure. It's not one that's going to leave anytime soon. I mean, my father hasn't been on the ship. It was 90 years ago. 90 years ago, it was a long time. And yet it had a lot of history before that, you know, and Captain Bob would have been 150 years old this year. I mean, who talks about people who are that old? You know, people are still talking about them. People are still talking about the people they knew that sailed with them, and it's wonderful.
And the stories aren't just impressive to locals. Paul Peliquin is the photographer on board this trip, doing the job Margaret's father did 90 years ago.
So
To be perfectly honest, I never heard the name Bob Bartlett until 2 weeks ago when I got on board in Erie, Pennsylvania, and every day the story's just been growing and growing.
was another engineer.
I think it's safe to say my mind is blown. I actually have a degree in history, so history's always been something I've loved, and now to literally walk into this scenario, I'm blown away. And I'm trying to figure out how to become a snowbird and have this be my northern home.
Margaret hopes the past and present tales from the high seas continue to capture imaginations. And she hopes the Little Morrissey sails on for many years to come.
I hope it keeps coming back. Wouldn't it be cool if this was a regular thing, and I think there's probably lots of other people too that feel that way, and that's what we need to do to keep the stories going, right? It's got to travel generations.
There's one more leg of the journey here before this vessel travels back to Massachusetts. She'll sail to nearby Holyrood with many guests on board, including Margaret Angel. 132 years after this boat's first plank was laid, a special schooner still offering adventure.